You're listening to the RonsUpdate Podcast, episode 142. Hey everybody, Ron here. Welcome to the RonsUpdate Podcast. If this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The RonsUpdate Podcast is produced, what am I going to say here? Every 3 months, I don't know. Anyway, my goal is to do it every 2 weeks, and that's never happened. Anyway, the show notes are found at outtro.com. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow me on Twitter at LostTrailRunner and on Facebook. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get on with the show. Well, it looks like it's about time for another Ron's Update. It's been about 2 months, I guess, maybe more than that. First thing I want to talk about, the unexpected death of Paul Sherwen. I don't know if any of y'all pay much attention to cycling, but I have I've cycled quite a lot in my life, but as far as being a spectator, I think I started paying attention to professional cycling back probably in the mid-90s when the first Union Grand Prix came to Atlanta. I volunteered and went down there and did that for a couple of years while that series was going on. And during that period of time, Phil Liggett, and I don't know if Paul Sherwen was with him, but was the commentator for that series. And shortly after that, I got interested in watching the Tour de France on TV. And every year it was Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen. And I just got so used to those two being the commentators on the Tour de France, it's just going to seem awfully strange to not see Paul Sherwen on there anymore. He died on December the 2nd at age 62 of a heart attack in his sleep. Well, that's kind of a shock, isn't it? So I don't know what to say. Maybe the only thing I can think of, as far as the commentating for the tour, maybe is Bob Roll taking over in his place. But it's really a big loss to lose Paul Sherwen. So that's just really, something. Since it looks like my last podcast was put out in August, I've got some races to go over that I've run since then. I guess I'll update you on how many races do I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 races I've done since August. None of them in a spectacular fashion. But when you're an old geezer, it doesn't really matter, does it? Anyway, in September, I did a night trail race out at Little Mulberry Park that the Dirty Spokes organization put on. It was a 3-miler at night. And I won my age group in that particular race. In October, I didn't actually run a race on the 7th of October, but the Ginger Runner, who is a ultra runner on YouTube every year does this year is what he calls the Ginger Runner Global Run. It's a 2-hour run, and he gives different prizes for different categories, like the most vertical, the longest distance, the best looking, all that kind of stuff. Well, I did that run, 2-hour run, and this is the second year I've done it. And neither year have I really put in for any of the awards because it wasn't really important to me. And then on I think it was about the 13th of October, I ran a Xterra trail race out at Fort Yargo State Park. I think it was a 3-mile race, and I came in second in my age group in that. Then on November 3rd, I went down to Disney and ran the Wine and Dine 10K, and I placed second in my age group in that particular event. And none of these races were particularly fast, and even on my standards, being an old guy now and running slower, but I ran fast enough to place. And the important thing to me is there was more than just me in the age group. If you get first in an age group and you're the only one in there, that's not that big of a deal. But if there, at least 3 or 4 people, you feel like you've accomplished something. So at Disney, there were like 9 in my age group, and I came in second. And I believe at Fort Yargo, there were probably 5, and I came in second. And the night trail race at Little Mulberry Park that I came in first in my age group, there was probably 3 or 4 in the age group there too. So anyway, on December 9th, which was yesterday, I completed the Jeff Galloway half marathon, and I have no clue what place I finished in because I haven't seen the results yet. But the first 6 miles of that particular race, I ran with Kevin Gwynn, Roxanne Baggett, and Scott Perkinson, and it was like a social run. We were running like 10 seconds and walking 30, and we still were averaging like a 15.5-minute pace doing that. But after close to 6 miles, I switched and picked up my pace some. So I ended up finishing the half, and if I would have stuck with them for the whole race, I would have finished in a 3:30. And since I picked it up after about 6, I finished in 3:10. I kind of wanted to go under 3 hours, but when you do half the race at a 15:30 pace, it's kind of hard unless you're really running fast to make up that difference by the end. And I was running 15:15 on the flats and downhills, and I was doing a 15:30 on the uphills. So, it was a comfortable run. I really wasn't pushing it. I was just enjoying myself yesterday, and I really had a good time. It was supposed to really be a crappy weather day. The forecast had been in the mid-30s and rain and wind from 16 to 20 miles an hour. And fortunately, it didn't rain the whole race. I mean, it did about 8 miles. It got a little bit of sprinkle, but other than that, it didn't rain the whole race. And it was in the mid-30s, maybe up to 38 possibly. And there was some wind, but it wasn't like they had predicted. So I had dressed accordingly, and I felt comfortable the whole way. I wasn't overheated, and I wasn't cold. But of course, I wasn't generating a lot of body heat going the pace I was. But I had a good time, had good conversation with people. It was a nice race. And the Extra Mile podcast group we had meetups for supper the night before the race, and it was a lot of camaraderie within that group. So if you're interested, you ought to look into going on Facebook and find the Extra Mile podcast group and joining. That's Kevin's podcast. He's got two. He's got the Extra Mile and he's got the Extra Mile Galloway edition. So anyway, that's my races for so far for this year, and probably be the last race for the year. I have been doing customized training with Chris Twiggs from the Galloway organization for probably over a year now. And I talked to him last Tuesday night, and I had kind of been semi-ill from just before the Disney race on November the 3rd up until about a week before the Galloway race. And my heart rate, resting heart rate, which is normally around a 48, had jumped up to around a 55. And then on my runs, where I usually, when I'm doing a medium slow run, my heart rate stays somewhere in the low 120s, I'd say. I mean, I'd been pegging up into the 140s and 150s. And on one of my long runs, I even got up into the 170s, which I didn't know my heart rate went that high. And so he said, he had told me last Tuesday before this race, he says, if I was you, I would just enjoy myself and not push it. And that's what I did. And that's why I kind of did the race the way I did. It was because of that. But what was weird, that whole race, I think my maximum heart rate got up to about maybe 138, and I think I averaged about 120 for the whole race. So it seems like my heart rate's getting back down to normal now. So we'll see if I'm going to... I really don't have any training goals going on right now for the rest of this year and early next year. About the only thing I may do, and I'm not sure that I'm going to do it, is the resolution run that the Atlanta Track Club puts on New Year's Day. It's going to be down at Piedmont Park this year, and it's a 5K. And I haven't really decided if I want to do it or not. So that is a possibility, but other than that, I don't know. And then somebody said the other night that there were all of the races at Disney for marathon weekend were still open. And I started thinking, well, I might go on and sign up for the 10K down there. But then I thought better of it and decided, nah, I don't want to drive all the way back down there just to do a race, particularly if I'm just going by myself, So anyway, that's my update for now. So maybe I'll try to do another one in a couple of weeks. I guess we'll have to hold our breath and see on that, won't we? All right. See you later. Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to today's podcast. We'll be here next time. Keep the emails coming in and be sure to subscribe.